We're Colleen and Jill, and we did the Interactionist Theory.
So some background information about the theory is that it became prominent in the 1960s, and it is now one of the most prominent models for understanding social life. It grew out of pragmatism in the 1800s, which and the birthplace of pragmatism was in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And so what being pragmatic means is the definition is dealing with things sensibly and realistically in a way that is based on practical rather than theoretical considerations. It is also a field of study, which is a subfield of linguistics, and it studies how context contributes to meaning. In my experience with pragmatism, it's kind of like the ends justify the means, or like doing something that might have consequences, but it's good in the end. So this is what the theory grew out of. And pragmatism was later connected to sociology through a book that I'll talk about, which began the theory. The theory became important in between the 1950s and the 1980s because it challenged another theory called functionalism, which was more dominant in the 1950s. But then by the 80s, it was more widely accepted. And some more background information was that some important people involving the theory are William James, John Dewey, Charles Peirce, Charles Horton Cooley, and William Isaac Thomas. James, Dewey, and Peirce were important to the creation of pragmatism, which happened in the 1800s after the Civil War, which would, as I said, lead to the interactionist theory. And in 1902, Charles Horton Cooley, what he did was he developed the concept called the looking glass self, which is part of the theory. And then another important person is George Herbert Mead, and he wrote a book in 1943, and that's what connected pragmatics to sociology. And the book is called Mind, Self, and Society. I have a picture of it on the right. And that's what mainly created the interactionist theory. And then a few years later, in 1937, Herbert Blumer created the name for the theory.
So the main point of the interactionist theory is that it's a theoretical approach to understanding the relationship between humans and society. And basically what this means is that humans communicate and interact with each other in society, and that creates meanings and symbols. And these meanings and symbols that arise from the interactions form the basis of how humans act and behave. The critiques, the interactionist theory pretty much ignores psychological factors like emotions, motives, intentions, and the unconscious that might impel or impact the human. And the theory downplays or fails to take into account macro social structures and the impact of society, such as norms and cultures, which is saying that this theory basically only focuses on micro level interactions.
And for applying this theory to the classroom, as Colleen just said, the theory is mainly based on micro-level interactions and small, meaningful interactions. So if applied to the classroom, the students would definitely be working in small groups. And also the teacher could definitely encourage social interaction between students. And they could do partners. Possibly, if working with an ELL student, you could partner a native English speaker with a ELL student. This theory, working in small groups, also helps the ELL students learn English in the small group settings. And speaking language are major parts of the theory, so they would heavily be emphasized. And then reading and writing would also consist of a one-on-one approach, which would definitely benefit the ELL student. An example activity for this theory would be if the students participated in partner reading, because they'd be working in pairs, and one student will be summarizing after each paragraph, and which will greatly benefit the non-ELL student, but also the ELL student.
So our comprehension question is, what did the interactionist theory grow from, and what is it understanding the relationship between? And our feedback question is, could we have done anything different to help you understand this theory more, and what worked well with it?
Those are our sources.